Hi, my name's Shane. I'm one of the directors at Tomoka Fine and Rare. We're a whisky retail and investment shop that's been around for the last 13 years, initially in St Albans as a small retail outlet and now with a flagship store and brokerage office in the Royal Exchange in London. We're now going to be doing a series of podcasts that talk you through the world of the spirits industry, not just whisky, and that we call the Tasting Room. Hi everyone and welcome to the Tasting Room. It's our first podcast, and with me today I have Jordan Hillman from Angus Dundee Distillers, and welcome. How you doing? And so we're just going to get the ins and outs of everything to do with Angus Dundee, and hopefully taste some amazing whiskey. So thanks again for coming down.
Oh, no worries at all.
What I first want to obviously touch on is, like I've always said, since we've obviously had you on in our shop, that you're kind of like a sleeper in the world of whiskey, because not everyone, I guess, knows about Angus Dundee. You keep yourself very independent, not in the kind of mainstream. So I guess, first of all, tell me about Angus Dundee, tell me the history and...
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the show. I believe I'm the first guest as well. So you brought in the big guns.
First and the best.
Well, we'll let the public decide on that one. But yeah, no, a little bit about our company, I guess. So Angus Dundee was set up by my granddad in 1950. My granddad Terry Hillman's 94 now, still working 7 days a week. So he's quite, he's still quite a remarkable. He was a remarkable human being, but he just loves work. Yeah. He always says the day you stop working is the day you die. So, and he's still enjoying his work. Yeah. Enjoying his work at the moment. But yeah, no, Angus Dundee. My granddad's favourite film was Crocodile Dundee, so we always wanted the name Dundee in the name. And Dundee is in the region of Angus, so we called ourselves Angus Dundee. Also back in the 1950s, a little bit before our time, or before your time, or not?
Yeah.
People didn't have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
So we had to...
Well, I remember those times.
Yeah, so we had to look up things via a phone book. My granddad thought Angus, if that was at the start of the name, if you look in the phone book, you'd see Angus straight away. So eventually we've become a world famous company. It didn't really work out like that. Yeah. But he did try. So that's the name Angus Dundee. And
so it's all come from just... Yeah, I mean, the film thing's quite surprising. Yeah. But it's
the region. So Angus is a region in Scotland. And then it's actually quite ironic. I was actually speaking about this yesterday to my mum, and Glencadam, when we bought Glencadam in the early 2000s, is in the region of Angus as well. So it was almost fate that we ended up with Glencadam. But yeah, I digress, and we now have two single malt distilleries, Tomintoul in the Speyside region, Glencadam in the Highlands, and then kind of a sub-brand, Old Ballantruan as well, which is our heavily peated version of Tomintoul. So yeah, no, we're a small, independent, traditional family-owned company. I like the word sleeping. I always add the sleeping giant to it as well, because I don't think people necessarily realise how not how big we are, but we do a lot of export bulk whiskey. So that's kind of a large proportion of our company is to export white label sales, and that's really how my granddad set up the company. Yeah. And it was only until 2000 that we bought our first distillery, Tomintoul. So between the 1950s and 2000s, my granddad didn't own a distillery.
So how did you operate then? That was more contract distilling, or?
Well, it was more, my granddad always tells the story. He used to go up to Edinburgh one weekend, buy a cask of whiskey, sell it, come back down to London. And he did that for a number of years. And it was actually until about the early 1980s when he had a call with someone from Diageo. Quite just a small company. Yeah. And they said on the phone, my granddad said, I'm a big player in the industry now. I've been buying and selling casks a long time. And the man from Diageo laughed at him on the phone. And he said, no, you're not a big company until you actually own your own distillery. Because it's almost like a game of chess. Yeah. The more chess pieces you have, i.e. the more distilleries you have, the more you can exchange with other players. And it took my granddad then 12 years from that phone call to kind of save enough money and to find the right distillery for him. And lucky enough, that was
because even in those days, distilleries aren't cheap. I know you get distilleries that are mothballed, and then they become a little bit, if they go through like the holdings to buy on auction or in receivership, but it's not
on
cheap.
eBay.
I don't think I've ever seen one on eBay, but that would be the day. But it's a big step. I mean, how many? I don't suppose they ever divulged how much he sold to get to that stage of.
Well, he borrowed a lot of money. Put it that way. So
yeah.
He's come from nothing, born and bred in Hackney, East End of London.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where he was.
So not initially from Scotland?
No, a lot of his family, all his cousins are all Glaswegian.
Yeah.
But you can tell from my accent, I sadly haven't picked that one.
Well, that's what I was always going to say. You never come across as a Scot.
Yeah, it shows. It's always great because I tell people we're family owned, and they're like, "Oh, but you're not Scottish." But no, we're born and bred in Hackney.
Yeah.
But a lot of his family are all Scottish. But no, he came from nothing. Big family came over after the war, and he really started from nothing. So no, there's no better feeling than being family owned. I can't really explain it, but it's similar to yourselves. You're a family owned company.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't say I guess a family in the respect of we always remained independent, and it was. Me and my business partner originally started up Tomoka, and we obviously ran it for the initial sort of 11 years before we brought on investors and other partners. But we very much run it as like a family business.
Well, you're still the main man there.
Yeah, and it was in our hometown. We opened up the shop, so we built a lot of homegrown relationships on that way. But it is definitely the best way to approach it, and I think more so as well is that. When you've got family involved or it's a family business, you work harder and everything's more meticulous because everyone that we deal with when we deal with sort of cask investments, we work with a couple of the brands that are family run, and when you go and look at the operations that they have, where you've got brothers that run the distilling operation, you've got the father that oversees everything and the engineering side of things, and you've got the mother that runs the office and the daughter that runs the rent. It's impressive and it's very fluid. It's a better oiled machine working that way.
Well, I always say that it almost doesn't feel like work in a way because you're actually doing something
you like,
that you enjoy. I remember my first experience with whiskey was when I was about 4 years old at a show in Scotland. Obviously, don't say that to the camera, but we're not promoting underage drinking here at all. But what I mean is I've always kind of been involved in it. It's always something we speak about at home.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time we had a conversation about the weather or the environment. It's always about whiskey. How can we do things different, or what do you think of releasing this expression, or should we open a distillery in China, for example? We're building a distillery in China at the moment.
Oh, right, okay.
We're looking at building in India as well. So that so many conversations in our house are involved around work and whiskey, but they don't really feel like work because it's generally something you're really interested and passionate about at home, and that's always kind of been installed in us by my granddad. It keeps him going. Whiskey.
So did you start selling from a young age?
Well, I can't comment on that to the maybe off the camera I can divulge, but no.
I've always wrapped my kids into helping out.
Have you?
So whenever I can, and they're far from.
Well, I guess as long as you're selling and not trying the product.
As long as they're not doing the actual transaction.
I think
they can sit there and talk about it and show someone.
That's very. We used to. We still do actually for the last 24 years now. We do the Spirit of Speyside Festival in Dufftown.
Yeah.
And I always say if you haven't been, you should go to it because it's the best whiskey show I've never
been to Dufftown.
I've ever been to. The home
sounds amazing. Dufftown.
The home of whiskey. It's a great name.
Yeah.
And I remember once.
Just reminds me of Simpsons Duff beer.
Yeah. Well, there are a few beers there as well. But I was about 6 and my little brother was about 3 years old. And we were in the car driving up to Dufftown for the first time. And we were sort of crying in the back because we were a bit bored. Who knows what we're doing up in the middle of nowhere. And my grandma goes, "Oh, we're going to a fun fair today." And we were like, "Oh, amazing. Are there going to be rides there? Are there going to be slides? Are there going to be amusement parks?" And my grandma says, "Oh, no, it's not that sort of fun fair. It's a whiskey fair." And we were like, "Oh, come on now. We're children. We don't want to be at a whiskey fair all day.
Dragged around, yeah.
And then my granddad goes, "Oh well, boys, do you reckon you can sell whiskey?" And you know, when you're 6 years old, you're always confident, more confident then than I am.
Yeah.
Than I am now. We're like, "Oh yeah, of course we can sell anything." And my grandma goes, "Right, okay, boys. So for every bottle you sell at the show, I'll give you £1." And we were like, "Oh, amazing! How many stickers, football cards can you buy with £1?" And I think people genuinely felt sorry for us at the show. All these hundreds and hundreds of people, and they'd seen these two little boys,
little kids,
handing out whiskey. Oh, I didn't say that. Asking someone to pour a whiskey. That's a better phrase to say it. And really pleading with people to buy a bottle. And it got to the end of the first day, and I think we made about £80 each. And my grandma said,
"Oh, back then."
Whoa. My grandma said, I can't afford that." So she tried to then back out the deal and go down to 50p. So we then said, okay, unless we're going to get £1 every year, we're not coming again until we got to a sensible age. But really, that was our first experience in whiskey, and it's an amazing show for us because it's one that my mum goes to every year. My grandma, my granddad, my dad used to go to it every year as well. So for us, it's a very important and special show because it's the only show every year that all of the family go to. And what I would say is you don't get that anywhere else. You won't go to a whiskey show and generally see 4 or 3 generations at a show. But that's really what makes us unique to any other company in the whiskey industry.
I think are you then probably the oldest attendees of it, do you think?
Well, my granddad's the longest person in the whiskey industry in general.
Wow.
So he's now 75 years is a long time.
Yeah.
To be in the industry. And I don't think there's any
other... Well, records then, really?
Well, he doesn't like those sort of accolades, but I don't think there's any other company who attend whiskey shows that have 3 generations quite ordinarily at a show. And that's one thing we really pride ourselves on, is that family element. It's the same with you guys. When someone goes into a shop, they want to feel like they're almost part of the brand as well. And I always find when I come into your shop, that's one thing the staff always try and portray, is they're giving your words of wisdom. They know what they're selling. They know every brand in that shop, which I think is a testament to you. It's
training, and it's that personal shopping experience. It's very different. You know, by all means, people can make their own decision. But I think a lot of people, even if you're a seasoned whiskey drinker, you like guidance. You like someone that's approachable and will really kind of try and get to know you, get to know your palate, get to know what your likes and dislikes are. And then that way, at least that keeps them coming back, and then you remember them when they come back again. Going, "Oh yeah, how was that one?"
Yep.
You know, do you fancy branching out to try this now? And
but now I guess you only recommend Tomintoul and Glencadam and Old Ballantruan in the shop.
It's the well, you have got Pride of Place actually in the centre of the shop, so it's normally visually where we can take people straight away. Fantastic. And the good thing as well is you have obviously different styles in your range.
Yeah.
And actually, if before we go down that route, we talked about the background of Angus Dundee, but what people see in terms of the UK market and what we have on for sale with the 3 brands, Tomintoul, Glencadam and Ballantruan, what I guess is something that what people wouldn't necessarily know about you in terms of what a distillery does sort of behind the scenes or into it, because I know for a fact we haven't touched on it too much, but you do a lot in the European market in terms of other brands that you don't necessarily see here.
Yep.
And you just touched upon the fact that you're opening in China.
Yep.
And yeah, what don't we know?
Well, some things we don't like to digress, but really how my granddad set up our company was we were effectively a white label company. Mm-hmm. So someone would come to us and say they want to have a blended Scotch whiskey. And then really the best thing about Scotch whiskey is, I guess it's under law, it has to be matured, distilled and bottled in Scotland for at least 3 years and 1 day. So really it's a protected market. So if someone, let's say from France or Germany or Poland, obviously other countries are available, if they want a Scotch whiskey, they have to come to us, unless they have their own distillery in Scotland. It's expensive having your own distillery. They have to come to us to make the product. So really, a lot of what we do is white labeling for a lot of other companies. So you'll see on the shelf different blended Scotch whiskies, and a large proportion of those, although they're not owned by ours, will all be our whiskey. So that's really one thing that a lot of people don't know. And then touching on China and India, my granddad set up Angus Dundee, New Delhi and Shanghai back in 2011. Really, when
India as well.
Yeah, really when the markets were relatively small.
Yeah.
Now they're the places to be. Everyone wants to be there. But really, I think my granddad had the hindsight and the foresight to really foresee that it eventually was going to take over the world.
And that comes with experience and being in the world long enough to notice.
Well, he always says doing enough bad things and making enough mistakes, because he's made a lot of mistakes, and we've lost a lot of money in doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
But he had the wisdom really to know where the growth markets were going to be. So that's probably something a lot of people don't. I always say that the brands are almost like the cherry on top of the cake. Yeah. But the actual cake is made up of really all the blended Scotch whiskies that we sell around the world. And same with every whiskey producer. About 90% of whiskey sales around the world, even higher, are blended Scotch whiskies. Yeah. So
I do remember you telling me before that we can't mention names, but you provide a lot of whiskey for a certain blended whiskey brand, which is a big brand. So it shows it's a testament to the quality of your liquid.
Yeah.
What's the names of the brands that you've got in European market that we don't get in England?
Ooh, we've got some good ones. Well, we've got the Dundee, which is a really good blend.
Oh, so that's named after
the
crocodile Dundee.
Yeah,
is there a crocodile on the label or something, or a big knife or something?
Oh, might be a crocodile on it. We've got a really cool brand that I actually think you have in your shop called For Pete's Sake.
Yes, we do. It's like a nice little entry level. It's great on price. Good level of peat.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story of how we actually came about that brand. It was actually originally launched in Sweden. Now, Sweden's a very interesting market because obviously it's government run and it's really hard to get into the market. But actually, we've got 3 of the top 5 whiskies in the Swedish market. And we won.
Yeah, because they provide. It's almost like in-house, isn't it?
So they
have to be through the government.
Yeah. So they come to our distributor, and they say, okay, we're running a pitch for a blended Scotch whiskey with a certain level of peat. Yeah. And then they open it out to the industry, who wants it, and we said, okay, we'll go for this one. So we made the whiskey, and they tried the whiskey, and they said, oh, this is fantastic. You've won the pitch, but you need to come up with a name. So we were sort of umming and ahhing, what name should we go with? And I think eventually we came up with For Pete's Sake. And we
probably just out of anger, for Pete's sake, we've got to come up with a name.
Yeah. But it sticks to you. And then eventually the guys in Sweden gave us a call back and they said, oh, we've reviewed the name and we don't like it. Yeah. We don't think it's an appropriate name to have. You're going to have to come up with something different. Then about a few days later, they called up again and they said, oh, you know what? We've reviewed the name internally and we think it's a fantastic name, so let's go with it. And it's been an amazing product for us.
I think it probably took them a while to get the joke.
Yeah, probably.
That's the thing. I think when they realised it and thought, actually, it makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah. And it's been so successful in Sweden that we've kind of now launched it across the Europe and worldwide, namely in the UK. Yeah. But not many places in the UK have it, so I would encourage people to come to your shop and actually try it and grab a bottle. Probably about 25 quid, something like that.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a very I think it is one of our cheapest bottles that we have in the shop. Yeah. But again, that kind of follows suit through the whole I think range that we do is in terms of the price point is always it's value for money in the sense of there's a lot more whiskies out there that cost double the price that aren't as good.
No, but that's again a good thing about being family owned is you can control the price. Yeah. And as well, why would you charge people a silly amount of money to try your whiskey? We're not.
I appreciate that as well. I like that because I see from the brands that get too big for themselves, and they look at the industry from the outside and they think, oh well, they're charging that. Oh, let's just put our prices up and join them. And it's like, well, you can't just do that. There are certain brands that kind of elevate themselves to that for whatever means they have. Yeah. Which I don't necessarily always like, but you have to. There's a point you cross where you have to think, well, at the end of the day, what really is your bread and butter is the whiskey drinkers. Now, if you price them out of the market, there will be no one drinking. There's only so much people can buy to collect or buy to sit on, they should be just few and far between and keep that side ticking over.
Yeah.
But you need drinking liquid.
We like people buying our whiskey and opening it.
Yeah, and the price points are perfect, absolutely bang on. But that's interesting, yeah. So Sweden's obviously big. That's I've heard about that in terms of it's hard to get in, because we used to do a brand at Myra, which I think, I'm not too sure, they went into receivership. I'm not sure if they've actually got bought out at all. But I've known to like their whiskies. So and then you've got India and obviously China as well. Out of those ones there, who's the biggest you think at the moment? Is it because from what my theory is, or from what I've hear and speaking to people, it's India.
Yeah, India's the biggest market in the world.
China's must be just slightly behind.
China's probably in about third or fourth place, but India would be number one.
Yeah.
And obviously with the tariff situation going on at the moment, obviously the potential reduction in tariffs, that's really going to open up the market.
Yeah.
Even more.
But does that affect you too much of this? Because that's only really between us and them, rather than anything to do with America. So I don't think that should, unless they're kind of retaliating with it.
Yeah, I think it's really about, UK and India have done a deal where I believe in terms of us importing to India, there's going to be a lot less tariffs than what previously has. Normally there's about 200% tariff when you're importing to India. Whereas now I think they're looking to reduce it to 40%.
Oh, wow.
So if you think about it, it's already the biggest market in the world.
Yeah.
In India, they love whiskey.
They've been screaming for liquid.
They drink more whiskey than water in India.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
So it's a massive market for whiskey. And now obviously the more economically beneficial tariffs in place to make it a bigger market, obviously the better it's going to become. So it's got potential to be a massive
because they've even
market.
Had to deal with not something we deal with too much over here, but they deal a lot with fraudulent whiskey.
Yeah.
Because they can't get enough of the actual real stuff. They end up just making like a flavoured spirit, which is legally a spirit.
Yeah.
But it's flavoured whiskey essence.
Yeah.
It's not actually
a lot
whiskey.
of admix stuff in India.
Yeah.
But no, it's a big. Have you been to India yourself or not?
I've never been. I've been to Sri Lanka a few times because that's my family background. But again, when I was very, very young. But even then, I remember, even Sri Lanka, they love their whiskey.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they have a Sri Lankan single malt whiskey?
No, not that. No, I to be honest, I've never really checked on it. I should probably do that.
Maybe that could be your new business
maybe
venture.
Reach out into the Sri Lankan market. I had a lot of staff that worked for me over the years. When we had our bars and stuff before, which was Sri Lankan, and but they've never really mentioned any particular, because it's normally for them it's beer. But I do know that they love their whiskey and single malts, which is strange because my father doesn't. He's more into cognac than anything else, and his other brothers don't drink. So, I mean, I always find that the expansion quite intriguing in terms of where the market's going, because we've seen obviously a lot of brands struggle with supply and demand on that front, because obviously after COVID, then they were obviously having to fight with 2 years of closure. So when you then speak on a global scale, and the fact that wasn't really a factor back then, because the market was really Europe and England, and a little bit into America, whereas now America's jumped up massively in terms of their demand for single malt over just standard blends, which is mainly Irish. And then that global scale has gone up for India and China. And then that means that there's not really enough properly to go around, where they're starting to panic, going, well, we haven't got enough. But on the flip side to that, I've also heard recently that some brands have been pulling out of European markets, which has then meant that they have actually had some extra liquid. But whether or not that's to counterbalance the English supply they need and
I really
elsewhere.
think the European market almost is a dying market.
Yeah.
A lot of the growth markets, all the Asian markets, the US, for example, for us is our number one value for single malt. So we sell a lot of whiskey to America.
Okay. Is that direct, or you just...
Yeah, well, our distributor out there, most countries we work with a distributor.
Yeah.
So the US, we sell a lot into New York and New Jersey. We do really well in those sort of markets. But the European markets, it's tough at the moment.
Yeah.
They're really important to us, our European markets. I mean, we sell a lot to Germany, Netherlands, France, Belgium. A lot of these are really our key markets, but I just think generally people are struggling a lot more in Europe.
Yeah. So the only caveat to that is obviously Sweden, because you've got that in and...
Yeah, Romania we actually do really well.
Oh, really?
We do well in these kind of obscure, smaller markets.
Yeah.
Almost where people like to take a punt on a family business. But I think a lot of the time it is working with the right partner as well. If you've got a good partner who are really behind the brand, they do a great job for you. It's like our customers in the UK. If, like yourself, we've got a good relationship and we're friends now. So if someone goes into your shop, you're more likely to push Tomintoul, Glencadam and Old Ballantruan than other brands. And I think generally that's how business goes. If you've got a good relationship with your distributor, they'll look after you, and you'll see good results. And
like that with the obscure places, I think you'll find that they probably don't get a lot of premium whiskey in there.
No.
So when they start introducing a liquid that's actually really, really good and at a good price point, then they'd be falling over their heads for it massively.
Yeah.
Because you've also got another player come into the mix, which is Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, that area, because obviously their laws are all slowly changing.
Yep.
To introduce alcohol more. We've always known that they've loved their alcohol, but before you had to buy licenses and it was a bit more kind of taboo. To now that's changing. I think they'll be a massive player soon.
Yeah,
but again, it's like Sweden. It's very hard to get in there because there's two entities that control the import in there.
Yep.
One of them again, I think, is backed by the Royals.
Yeah, we're with a company called Marine Insurance, which are one of the MMI. So they're one of the two big players in the industry, and one of the players you have to be with to sell whiskey in Dubai. But I love Dubai for a holiday, and now it's good because we can go for businesses. For business as well. But it's a good market. We're becoming a really good market for us as well. But again, you have to be with the right people.
Yeah, I mean, where do you see it going? I think in the next sort of 5-10 years, where do you think it's going to be? One, plain sailing, but then also, where do you think that any kind of trials and tribulations might be, or where can you see problems happening?
I think for the bigger boys in the industry, it's a tough time at the moment.
Yeah.
The general market is down, probably down by 10 to 15% worldwide, and that obviously creates a lot of challenges for the bigger players in our industry. If you look at sales worldwide, they're way down. But I always say then the best thing about being family owned, and my granddad always has this philosophy: if you have a bad year, just don't sell this year. Keep the whiskey aging for another year. And you don't get that if you're a big company, because you have to sell. You've got shareholders to please, and you're a big global corporate company, so you've got a lot of people you need to satisfy. Whereas we only have my granddad to satisfy. So there's always a funny joke. We have our end of year sales meetings, and every time, if my granddad finds out we've sold anything, he gets really upset. So actually our job is easy, because we can sell nothing and he'll still be really happy, because the whiskey will age for another year.
Yeah, and it's, these things, the whole world it runs on a cycle, whichever way you look at it, from any industry, assets and monetary, macros and investments, they all run on cycles. And it goes to the world, the economy and how we live. So at the moment, everyone has this cost of living crisis and that, but these situations happen. They go into trough and then they come back out again. So we see that now as well. We see this last year has been a little bit tough in the markets, back on casks and bottles as well. But when people have that foresight to look to the future, you can see, well, at the moment it's the best time to buy, and then wait for it to ride back up.
I always go with one unique saying, and it's: if people are happy, they drink.
Yeah.
And if people are sad, they drink even more.
Yeah.
So we're in a great industry. We're in a really lucky industry where we're always going to have a commodity that people want.
Yes.
It might not be like this, like the gin market went like that. Whiskey generally is more flatlined with a slight upwards curve. So you're never really going to see a big steep decline in whiskey.
No, and like, that's, you hit it right on the head there. That's the perfect scenario for whiskey, was to have that. The gin, I think, when people say it was a gin boom, and then you definitely have a gin bust, because you could see that happening. It went up so rapidly that the only way was to come down rapidly. Yeah. And we've noticed that in our shops. It's the sales of whiskey have now ramped up against the sales of gin.
Yeah.
You know, and even when in our original shop in St Albans, the first one, when that was first opened, funnily enough, you got two sides in there. One side was whiskey and one side was champagne. You had a small little section of gin. And then you had that gin boom happen after Sipsmith kind of changed everything around. And then you found that we were having one side gin, one side whiskey, and a small little bit of champagne. Yeah. Champagne really died off. And I think more so in COVID, because people, they were drinking, but they realised they could get their bubble hit on better Prosecco. And that then made the market of champagne. Plus, you obviously had Brexit happening as well. That's all kind of happened at the same time. Yeah. But you've seen a massive drop-off, whereas whiskey, I think, will always be the same. Yeah. I do find that when it comes to, I think more from an asset class scenario for whiskey, that we've seen that the better option now is always casks, because the bottles, they have been hurt slightly by narrative building stories, which is almost, it's created the same effect as the gin boom, but you can see how it's happened, and it's a big brand's fault for that. You know, Macallan and Suntory, that they're the ones that really kind of release bottles based on stories. That creates hype and ballots and everything else along the lines, and people then clamber around to get these bottles. And again, that curve for the performance of that bottle has done that. And then again, it has to come back down to meet that the normal steady curve and then go up. But then that means somewhere along the line, someone's taken that at the wrong point, then has to ride it back up again and take its time.
There has been a sharp decline on that side, almost like the Liz Truss mini budget. Went from here to here over nothing. Yeah, exactly overnight. That. Oh, I think we've spoke for long enough. I'm sure your audience want to see us have a few jams.
Yeah, why not?
So I thought really to start with, to celebrate, this year's a very big year for Glencadam distillery. Glencadam this year is 200 years old, so it's I think it's the fourth oldest distillery in Scotland, and one of the only distilleries to celebrate its 200th year anniversary.
Is quite a milestone.
It's an amazing achievement for Glencadam, and almost the story of Glencadam, we always call it the hidden gem of the whisky world, so no one really knows of Glencadam. Glencadam was established in 1825, but we purchased Glencadam in 2003. But 4 years before that, it was mothballed, so it wasn't producing any whiskey. Yeah. Closed distillery, the area wasn't fantastic, all the stills, all the equipment needed changing. So my granddad almost brought it back from the dead. And really, Robert Fleming, our master distiller across both the brands, he was almost given the Donald Trump task of make Glencadam great again.
Love it.
MAGA. Well, not MAGA, how would you call make Glencadam? MGG.
Yeah.
MAGA. It was a MAGA moment for Glencadam. Yeah. But I thought to celebrate, I'd bring you the Glencadam PX to try. I'm sure, hopefully, a lot of people have tried this and bought this in your shop. It's probably your
I think by now they should have done. I think they should have done. This is one that we definitely push on to a lot of people.
Yeah. So the Glencadam PX, the World Whisky Awards last year, 2024, actually won the best Highland Scotch Whisky of the year, which is an amazing award.
Actually, I remember you telling me that, yes.
Amazing award for us. It makes my granddad quite emotional.
I mean, the colour on it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's an amazing colour.
So it's had 5 years in bourbon, finished off for about 3.5 years in PX cask. But if you look at, the colour is...
But that's the PX
all
is
natural.
A phenomenal cask.
Yeah, Pedro
Jimenez, 3 years or so is a good amount of time.
It's a long time, and it's a lot longer than what I would say is industry average. Look at industry average, probably about 6 months to 9 months, whereas we like to do things a little bit different. We fill all of our casks dry, and we're also leaving them for a minimum of 3 years. So it is a long time. But I think I always like to play this game before I start drinking the whiskey. I always like to say our mind is a very powerful thing. So I could tell you, I do a lot of tastings worldwide, and I never like to lead with the tasting notes of the whiskey. If you look on the back of our bottle, you won't have tasting notes on the back of the bottle, because my granddad doesn't really like the idea of tasting notes.
Okay.
Because the mind's a very powerful thing. If I suddenly told you you should be drinking with a PX Toblerone fruit and nut chocolate, it's amazing how your mind suddenly starts thinking Toblerone fruit and nut chocolate.
All psychological.
So obviously we've got a great camera crew here today as well. So what I like to play a trick on one of the cameramen. So who's going to volunteer to? Oh, yeah, we go.
JP, come on.
JP, come over here. JP, fantastic. If everyone's watching, use him going forward. but we're going to play a trick on you. So Glencadam PX.
Yes.
Very fruity in style of whiskey.
No pressure.
But if I tell you Toblerone fruit and nut chocolate, let's see if your mind suddenly starts tasting Toblerone fruit and nut chocolate.
I'll do the same actually, because I do
Be a
love
bit
my
awkward now if
Toblerone.
it doesn't get Toblerone fruit and nut chocolate.
Yeah, it's got. I definitely taste the chocolate.
Yeah.
Definitely taste the chocolate in that.
Rich, fruity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fruit's a no-brainer on this one, because for me I always call it like, I mean, sherry's normally like a Christmas cake time, but when you get a PX and you get heavy colour like this, it's just like stewed fruits, plums. It's like a fruit and nut bomb.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But it's funny because before, I never really get too much chocolate. It's really about the rich fruitness for me, I think.
Yeah.
But again, because you just psychologically said it,
Yeah.
and I find that a lot, because I tell people a lot when it comes to tastings, and or when we do our own private tastings as well. I would say that there's no wrong answer in whiskey.
Apart from if you're getting heavily smoked paprika.
There is, yeah, there's a limit to it. There's a limit to it, I guess. But in a sense of where people go with their own sort of nostalgic memories and what flavours get picked out, they got the eye of the beholder. It's the I guess the beholder of the tongue in that respect.
No, I like the idea of that. I know. Look, Glencadam PX for us has been fantastic. I think value for money always shocks people when I tell them this retails for about. Well, you'll tell me what does this retail for?
This is under £50.
Under £50.
I think it's like 48 something, which is phenomenal.
It's incredible for what it is.
For that price point.
I think it tastes 5 times more expensive than what it actually costs.
Yeah.
So you're getting a great whiskey in terms of quality, which is shown by the award. To put it into perspective, when people say, "Oh, age is the most important factor of whiskey," okay, it makes a slight difference, but look at this. This beat whiskies that were 10, 15, 20 times older than what this is. This is an 8-year-old whiskey, and it beats 750 other whiskies in its category.
Yeah.
To win the best Highland Scotch whiskey of the year. So really, it just goes to show you good quality casks. Casks are 70% of the problem, I guess. If you put your whiskey in a good cask, you're going to get generally a good whiskey.
Yeah.
So at Glencadam especially, we use about 80% first fill bourbon as part of the recipe, which is a hugely high number. And then obviously finishing it off for the right amount of time in good quality, non-seasoned, authentic sherry casks gives you a great quality whiskey. And I really think that comes through on the whiskey as well.
It really is so easy drinking.
Yeah.
And it's a richness to it, which normally, and that's the surprising thing, which, like you said, it's not to say bad against other brands, but when I say it to people in the shop, I point out certain brands that are literally double the price, 3 times the price. I'm like, you're getting the same quality, but the richness in it is the same as something that's like 15, 20 years old.
Yep.
It must be something about the Toms actually, because you've got your brown Tomintoul. I remember a few years ago, Tomintoul won world's best whiskey, but the funny thing was, like you're saying, they won first and second place, both with the same score. One was a £4,000 bottle, 42-year-old, 42 or 47-year-old. The other one was their entry-level £36 legacy. And it goes to prove that it's not always about the age.
Yep.
It's just about something that has been produced in the best way possible, right amount of aging, the care's been put into it, and it goes on the shelf at the right price point, and it's phenomenal for the price point.
Yeah.
And the mouthfeel after as well, it lingers.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Really, really good liquid.
Well, you've actually bought your own branded chocolate to go with the Glencadam PX, haven't you?
I did bring a brand chocolate. I had this thing. I definitely have this thing which I do on tastings a lot. Is that we do a lot of food pairings, and we do things like cheeses and stuff like that, and even oat cakes and cookies and stuff like that. It's generally on the sweeter side because I've got a sweet tooth, but I always do like to pair with chocolate. So I have brought one with me today. Now normally I use Lindt chocolates, but they weren't near me at the time. So
obviously other chocolates were available.
Other chocolates are available, yeah. Hence why I've gone with this Montezuma's today. But this is 100% black coca with some orange, which is the orange nibs. Actually, I think will complement quite nicely because I always find in this one with those kind of stewed fruits and everything, and the kind of chrysanthemum tones, I do get a nice hint of orange zest, which I don't think is actually necessarily put on your tasting notes, but I do pick a little bit of orange in there. But I always find, having a nice, at least minimum 70% cocoa. This is 100.
Oh, thank you very much.
And the reason I always pair stuff with whiskey purely because if you're buying a premium bottle of whiskey, and you might be spending, I mean, this is obviously on the cheaper side, which is fantastic, but if you're spending 50, 60, 100 pounds, you find a lot of people will go through bottles quicker at home if they just pour out a dram and then just necking it back. If you're actually going between sipping and chewing on something, the mouthfeel becomes even more apparent, and then you find you salivate on that for a long time. So you're taking longer in between sips each time. And that would make your bottle last longer, because normally if I don't drink a lot at home, which is strange. I always tell people that, and they think because the industry I'm in, even before with my nightclubs and stuff, I've never been a big drinker at home.
Just a bottle a night then? Or?
Just yeah. But I if I do have something, I will pour out a double measure, and it will probably last me the whole evening, just by the fact I'll pair it with something. It's normally it's a chocolate, or if it's like a smoky whiskey, like if we had, like, say, Ballantruan, for example, then I would have like a Parmesan cheese or creamy cheese to kind of cut through it.
Or good steak, I'll tell you now.
That's good.
A good steak with an Old Ballantruan goes really well.
Yeah, I can get that.
Maybe we can do a steak and Ballantruan sauce in the future. Go to a nice restaurant, have a good steak with a Ballantruan sauce.
I'm always down for that.
Yeah. But no, to any viewers watching as well, or any chocolatiers, obviously watching, you're open to collaborating with some chocolate companies, aren't you?
Any brand, any brand. You want to bring me some chocolate? I'll push your chocolate with a whiskey. This was not too bad. I think it could do a few more orange nibs.
Intense.
I'm not doing.
I don't think I've
a
ever
review
had
of Montezuma's chocolate.
I don't think I've ever had 100% cocoa, and I must say it is rather.
It's strong.
On the strong side.
Actually, to have the sip of the whiskey after.
Yeah.
That almost did the opposite effect, where it really mellowed out the chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice though. It's nice.
Makes the whiskey taste like water.
But we've got another one here, which is the orange and geranium, which I think we're going to have with my one. Basically, it's a slightly different direction because with yours it's Scottish, ours is Irish, and we did this collaboration series with JJ Corey, which aren't really a distiller; they're a bonded bottler, and her background essentially was working in. I think she worked for LVMH, so her background was always with wines and champagnes, but she had access to these amazing coopages, so she would get the casks brought over. And we approached them and said, "Well, can we collaborate with you?" She said, "Yeah, we do a bonding series, so we work with different industries." And so they shipped us over to Ireland. So we went in through Shannon Airport, spent the whole day sampling whiskey, which was such a hard life, drinking whiskey all day. But we came up with the perfect blend. It's a single malt, but it's made up of 3 different sherry cask finishes, which is a Fino, Moscatel, and Palo Cortado. And just to give you a breakdown, it's 80% Fino, 15 Moscatel, and 5% Palo Cortado. Palo Cortado was one of the most punchy casks out there for sherry finishes, so we had to cut that right back, because otherwise it was just overpowering. Came up with the first edition, which was only 132 bottles, with the idea of doing a trilogy. So we're going to do 1 year, put the remaining liquid back in a cask to show what the journey in the wood's done for the first year, and then that last, the trilogy bottle to again take it in a different direction again. The first one we entered in the competition, but they run in such a lag that we entered it back in August last year, and that got announced beginning of this year. I think January, February, we won world's best under 12-year-old Irish single malt.
Oh, fantastic!
So and we went into the finals. I don't think we actually won the final one, but out of the main category one, we won the World Whiskey Awards. So it's done amazing. But the problem with that is we can't sell anyone. So, I've got an original 1 to 5, which I'm waiting for the end of the trilogy, and I'll release a set of 3 with a nice elaborate packaging and everything. But this is essentially the one I bought with today is the second release, which we put into a Oloroso cask, just to show what that 9 months has done in the liquid.
Cask strength as well? Or what's
this? So the first one was cask strength. The first one was 55%. This one is 48. And I think we made a conscious decision because we didn't find the first one overpowering for 55. But I think some people did find it was a little bit, and that's more the kind of the people that are new into whiskey.
Yep.
I think it just had a little bit too much to hit.
The bottle looks great as well.
Yeah, bottle's fantastic. You are very much constrained by them for it. Our box has more, I think, to do with us as a brand, whereas here it's mainly about the label on the top. But it does look amazing, and we've got the information of us on the back as well. What's annoying is I can't get the gold sticker from the award to put on because it's still not technically the same liquid. It is a little bit different. But we are.
Well, you can do it for the 5 special bottles you have, or
possibly. I mean, what I've tried to do is enter this again into another one. So if we can get each one winning an award, it'll be that'd be great. Good testament to us as well. It's always great to win awards. Back in 2018 we won best international spirits retailer with the IWSC, which is like the IWSC is the Oscars of the whiskey world.
Yeah.
And we beat off Whisky Exchange, Jerry's, Celtics. They were all in the final. And I mean, even to be honest, even for us, we were dumbstruck when we won that because we were at the award ceremony. We had Sekinder and everything sitting opposite us, and we were like, "What the hell are we doing here?" Because we are very, this was all based on our St Albans shop.
Yeah,
you can't swim a cat in; it's tiny.
Yeah,
and it was just like, but we've been invited here. There's got to be something in the air, and we won. And it was purely down to the fact of when it comes to the secret shoppers that come around. They were just blown away by the fact of how we engage with the client that comes through the door. We tried to go the extra mile because they threw us some curveballs, and we'd obviously answered them quite nicely and said that we're willing to do this and this and this. They loved the fact we did the tastings. We did a lot of social media engagement at the time, which the other brands didn't, and external events.
Well, you've got a great tasting room upstairs as well, don't you?
For the London one now, yes. Yeah, but we didn't before. We were just doing mobile tastings. We'd go around to people's houses, set up, or do ones at local restaurants. So we'd always work with sort of independents around St Albans to say, well, how can we help bring people into your restaurant? Let's do a tasting there. Let's bring people in. So that was working in the community, and they loved it all. So we were lucky enough to win it. So, and we were thinking about that a couple of years ago, saying, well, we haven't really entered anything since. We never really wanted to because I always find if you enter again, you're never going to win straight away.
Well, cheers anyway. Thank you for letting me.
But let me know what you think. And
so, what tasting notes should I be getting on this one?
I mean, the whole thing is because I remember the first one. The first one is very much quite similar to what you might get from your Glencadam, and you get that kind of Christmas cake tone. But in the original one, you had quite a nice nuttiness that came through. Whereas this one, straight away on the nose, for me, you get pear drops and candy banana.
What sort of pear are we talking?
I'm talking about the pear drops, which are
the sweets.
The little sweets in the tins, which is for me is always a very nostalgic note, and because that's so fixed in my head as a memory to my nan, because she had these little tins that you get on travel services, that whenever I pick it out or I saw on the whiskey that's got it comes straight away, because it's such an apparent smell. But it's very close to that candy banana. But on the palate, what the Oloroso has done has added a very sort of rounded sweetness, which is wine gums. That's the only thing I can really pick out that is so apparent.
What flavour of wine gums are we talking?
I think we're looking at the red one to make sense. Actually, red or orange. I think in terms of what I pick out in my head.
The red ones are the best though. If you're talking wine gums.
Yeah, I think no one touches the green or yellow, do they?
No,
green or yellow is always the ones that are left.
It's like Starburst or Mentos. You open the packet, you're looking for the pink ones or the purple ones.
Yeah, I remember opening the pack once, and there was not a single red one in there. Yeah, I was
wouldn't have been
distraught.
I would have been really distraught.
I mean, the thing is, it's always hard because you're always biased with your own, but it's I love it.
No, it's fantastic.
But once you get that initial sweetness out of the way,
it's actually,
that nuttiness still comes back in on the back end.
I find very creamy. I find it very creamy as well.
It is creamy, yeah. I mean, it has got good legs. It always has done, to be fair.
But there's always now. That's a good question. The art of drinking whiskey. How do you know? For example, Robert Fleming, our master distiller. We'll get him on the show one day. The most knowledgeable man in whiskey you'll ever meet.
That'd be interesting.
Robert's been master distiller.
I'm going to call you on that. I've got evidence of that, see.
Wow. I'm under the influence of whiskey, so I can back out of that one. But anyway, Robert Fleming's been master distiller for a distillery now for 52 years, so a long time. Mm-hmm. And Robert tries, on average, 600 to 700 whiskies a day. He's nosing a lot of whiskies for us, and he waters everything down to 20%.
Right.
Because he says at 20%, you're actually just getting the flavour profile of the whiskey.
Oh, really?
So you can't drink 700 whiskies a day, unless
you'd be Superman. You'd be dead.
Yeah. So at 20%, he feels that's the best sort of flavour profile and strength to actually nose the whiskey and get the influence of the whiskey.
Yeah.
So that's what he does. Our master blender, a man called Ian Fortief, he's always a sucker for opening the mouth when he tries the whiskey. And I watch a lot of videos how people.
There's a lot to be said for having the mouth open for the people that are newer to whiskey.
Yep.
Take a very small sip on first.
Yep.
Let that salivate for a little bit, and you've almost got nothing to swallow down because it almost gets eaten by your mouthfeel. Then you go in for a bigger sip. By that point as well, by doing the nosing, you've accustomed your palate to what's about to come. The alcohol burn goes off a little bit.
Yeah.
And as long as, people always say, well, if you do that properly, then you don't get any burn. That's rubbish. If the whiskey's got burn in there and it's not well distilled, it will still burn regardless.
Yeah.
You still have to have an incredibly smooth whiskey.
Yeah.
So really be smooth going down.
Yeah, it's always a funny one when, for the start of a tasting, and you're giving someone the first dram, you always trick them, what's the first thing you can smell? And it's a trick answer, because people are trying to be clever and they're like, oh, I get gummy drops, I get fruitellas, I get rhubarb crumble. And actually the first thing you're getting is alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah,
because
ultimately.
your palate or your mouth isn't used to what it's going to be drinking.
Yeah.
But then obviously as you have a few more drams throughout the night, that's when you really start picking up the flavours of the whiskey. And I think this is a fantastic whiskey.
Yeah, glad you like it. I mean, like I said, I'm biased, but it's.
What would this cost in the shop?
Unfortunately, ours is not like yours. Ours goes for about I think it's 110. I think. Oh no, this one might be 120 because it's now a year older.
Well, it's still very reasonable. How many is this limited to?
132 bottles. So it is limited, yeah. And I think over half of those are gone now. Probably a lot more than that, actually.
Hopefully, after this video airs, the rest of them will go as well.
It's available as long as as well as Glencadam and the whole range is all there as well.
Oh, of course, they have to buy a bottle of Glencadam to cover to
We could do a deal. If they buy that, they can buy that one.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Let me just try this. This one it says orange and geranium. I'm always a sucker to try something new. So, if you do you want a piece?
Yeah, I will go with a piece.
So this one's less cocoa actually. I'm just interested in what the geranium's going to do because I know that the orange should work. I'll try a little bit more. Any more? Okay.
No, all good. I mean, I can't say I know really a lot about geranium, but it definitely is a lot more fruity, and I think goes.
It's fruity and a little bit more floral, actually. That chocolate's nice. But that does really. That really works with the whiskey. That really works.
Yeah.
There could be, going back to the colour, I think, you could be saying it's red or orange wine gums because actually there is an orange note in that. I think, and I think even a little bit more stronger than what you've got in your Glencadam. But that works really well with that chocolate. I mean, this is a lot better flavour.
Yeah.
And by having the 74% cocoa, it's added a bit more creaminess feel into it to match the creaminess of the whiskey.
Well, that's your gift kind of out the way. I bought you a little special gift to try as well. And what I'd like to let you try is actually a bottle we don't make anymore.
So you can't buy it?
Well, when I say you can't buy it, if anyone wants to come into your shop and inquire about a bottle, my granddad might be able to find the odd bottle here and there. But generally,
so they got to come in and basically sweet talk me. And,
if you buy your bottle and our bottle, then you might have access to buying this bottle. But they can try this bottle because we're going to donate this bottle to the shop afterwards. But
amazing, thank you. That's really nice packaging as well.
Well, this actually won Best Packaging of the Year when we released it in 2015.
Oh, wow.
So the whiskey was
So
great.
it's been around for a while then, actually. 2015,
yeah,
that's
a long
what,
time.
7 years?
Well, 10 years.
No, 10 years now, yeah. I think 22,
I
25.
think you've had too many whiskies already, Shane.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, Tomintoul 5 decades. Really, when I talk about the collectible market, for me, if I'm collecting a whiskey, I'm really looking for something I can't buy again. And when we celebrated our 50th anniversary, Tomintoul was established in 1965. Mm-hmm. So it's a relatively modern distillery. And we celebrated our 50th anniversary back in 2015. So we thought, okay, what can we kind of do to commemorate the occasion? So we decided to release the Tomintoul 5 decades, and we gave it to a bottle to everyone who came to almost the party and the celebration of the family and the company. So this was made under the tenure of Robert Fleming. So Robert Fleming has been at Tomintoul for all this time as well, a long time, since 1965. And really, it's just kind of I always say it's an amalgamation of all the best styles of whiskey that Tomintoul has made over the decades. Yeah. So technically, if we're trying to be politically correct, it's the best ever 10-year-old whiskey you're ever going to try. Because a whiskey, you have to go with the AYS, the age of the young spirit. But the recipe really is 60% of the whiskey is 30 years old, and then 10% 20, 10, 40, and 50. All married together. Wow. And really, it's just a celebration of some amazing complexities of whiskey.
It's got up to 50-year-old liquid in there, which is
so what we do is it comes with the little leaflet as well, which I'll just hold it to the camera. And effectively, it describes each decade.
And it's a completely different bottle as well, actually, compared to...
Yeah, it's an amazing looking bottle. So it's like our perfume sort of style bottle. But Tomintoul 5 decades, everything really about it is to celebrate 50. So it's 50% alcohol.
I was about to say, yeah.
It's about 5,000 bottles. And it's an amazing whiskey. It's so complex. The 60% whiskey in their 30-year-old is Oloroso style Tomintoul. Yeah. And then we have kind of younger peated style of Tomintoul. And then 40 and 50 fully matured in bourbon style Tomintoul, all married together. Wow. So it's an amazing complexity of whiskey.
Because normally, obviously, Tomintoul, you openly quite say is a gentle dram. It's like a lighter liquid. Yeah. But I think, obviously, surely with this one, having liquids that are 50, 40, and you're going to bring a little bit more richness in just from the aging, I think, naturally.
I couldn't give you a tasting note, because every time I try it, I get something different. Yeah. So I've never tried anything like it. And what was amazing, really, was how cheap it was in relative terms. For when we first released this in 2015, it's probably about £200 on the shelf.
That's it?
Yeah. Now it's a bit more expensive. If you look online, for example, now it's probably £800-900 online. But if someone wants it in your shop, I'm sure we can work something out. But
£200 for something that's got 50-year-old liquid in it. That's pretty.
But for anyone watching, please come down to the shop and try it. You're going to have it in your shop.
We're there, so you come and you can speak to me for a change, and then buy something, and I'll give you a sample. Yeah. But no, so there is a potential that someone can buy it if they. Yeah,
if someone really is. Yeah. They can't buy a case of it, but they can buy a bottle of it. Yeah. So
amazing.
I bought that for you to try, just to kind of almost to help us with the tasting notes, because we pay our marketing team a lot of money to write tasting notes. So I thought almost we can get some cheap marketing done today.
So when it comes to so Fleming's obviously been around almost hand in hand with your father then, with your grandfather for most of the time.
Well, when my granddad bought Tomintoul in 2000, Robert stayed on. Yeah. So the condition for us buying, really, Robert and his team thought when we were buying Tomintoul.
So he was there before?
Yeah, he was.
Oh, I see.
It was owned by a company called White and Mackay.
Yes, I know.
And Robert was master distiller for Tomintoul and Tamnavulin, who owned White and Mackay at the time. Yeah. So White and Mackay had both of those brands. And Robert decided to stay on, which is very fortunate to us. He thought Terry was going to turn it into a shopping centre. So he thought, this Hackney East End boy's gonna come and turn this into like a development site. But my granddad really said to Robert, right, I'm gonna buy. This was before any negotiation started, and this sort of sums up who my granddad is. He came to visit. I'll digress and tell you another story. So I don't tell many people this story. So my granddad back in early 1990s spoke to someone from White and Mackay and a man called Brian Megson who now works for us.
All right.
But anyway, so he called Brian and he said, I want to buy a distillery. What can you give me? And they said, we've got a distillery called Tomintoul to offer you. Yes, Tomintoul, not Tomintoul. So he went to see Tomintoul with my uncle Aaron, and they're very straight to the point, my family. So they sort of go into this distillery and they said, no, this isn't the distillery for us. We haven't got that spark straight away. Yeah. And my granddad said, well, and Robert was the master blender for Tomintoul at the time, who took them round. And my granddad said, well, Robert, I'm here for the whole day, so you might as well show me your other distillery that you work at. And Robert said, okay, well, I'll take you to Tomintoul, but the company have said it's not for sale.
Right.
And my granddad said, well, Robert, everything's for sale. And Robert was like, oh, what's this man? What's this man doing? Yeah. So he took him to see Tomintoul. And for those who haven't been to Tomintoul, it's the most picturesque area in the whole of Scotland. It's so beautiful.
I've not been there, but I've seen pictures. It's amazing.
Up in the Cairngorm National Park.
Yeah. It's
amazing. If you want no mobile signal, if you want no supermarket for 12 miles, Tomintoul's the perfect place for you.
Yeah.
So anyway, they go into the gates of the distillery, and by the point of going into the gates, Terry had said, okay, he's going to buy Tomintoul. Robert and all his team are going to stay with him. And at the time, Tomintoul was only producing whiskey for 3 days of the week. And by the time they got in there, Terry said it's going to be 7 days a week, 24/7.
Wow.
So Robert thought this man was crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he never met him before, and suddenly he's going to buy a distillery. He's going to work for him, and he's going to turn Tomintoul into producing whiskey 24/7. And Robert's always said Terry's a man of his word, because they were sat down and Terry was looking at him and said, you're going to come and work with me, and you're going to make this into an amazing whiskey distillery. And it gives you goosebumps really talking about it, because Robert said he knew at that moment that Terry was a man of his word, and eventually it took him about 10 years to convince White and Mackay to sell him Tomintoul, because they didn't want to sell Tomintoul.
So from that point, it took 10 years.
It took him 10 years to eventually convince them to buy Tomintoul, and he was able to purchase Tomintoul, and Robert stayed on. All of his team stayed on. We've got an amazing team there. We've got a woman called Nikki Brand, the most amazing woman you could imagine. She's the personal assistant to Robert, but she does everything. Yeah. Event, she planned the 50th anniversary event. She redevelops houses. She does everything. She's the most intelligent person you could ever meet. And she's been there since she was 16 years old as well. So it very much is a community there.
Yeah, yeah.
About 20% of the village of Tomintoul work for Angus Dundee now. So it's a very important, it's like a second home. It's like a big family, really, Tomintoul. And
I noticed that a lot about distilleries that are in obscure villages, that most of the people work there.
Yeah. Well,
it's amazing. I love that. I love that.
Well, Tomintoul everything is 100% manual. Nothing's automated. So my granddad always says people make whiskey, not machines. And I think really that translates. We've been talking a long time. We haven't actually tried.
I know.
We haven't actually tried the whiskey, but
thanks for bringing it along.
like from my point of view. Thanks for having me.
No, I love the stories. I love hearing stuff like that, because it's. And actually, I remember you did mention this to me, and I think we should touch upon that. That you bought Bob Dylan's house.
Oh yes, Bob Dylan's house.
Is that based near? Is that near Tomintoul or near Glencadam?
In a place called Nethy Bridge.
So which is it nearest to?
Tomintoul. It's about 20 minutes away from Tomintoul.
Yeah.
Tom Jones in the Towel, or Tom Cruise in the Towel.
Tomintoul.
So yeah, Nethy Bridge, an amazing mansion, estate, 16 bedrooms that we're redeveloping, and we're really using that for kind of our VIP customers, friends, family, to come and host whiskey tastings there. So I'm sure we're looking to do something with you guys in the future. That obviously we're.
Yeah, I mean, now I know about it. I've already got gestures of bringing some clients up there, and
JR, you going to come and try this?
Seeing the piano.
50-year-old whiskey.
So is it actually Bob Dylan's original bed in there then?
Yeah, well, Bob Dylan's bed's still there, and also his piano's there as well. Wow! So if you're a big music fan,
it's
fantastic. You can come and jam on his piano, and then come sleep on his bed. Wow. So Jay, I'm not even going to try and educate you on tasting notes here, because it's so complex. I'm sure, Shane, you've realised that it doesn't really taste like anything you've probably tried before.
No, because it's
such a...
What's strange is I'm getting notes from a lighter side. So I'm getting like apples and pears and things like this that are coming through. Then I'm getting heavier notes, which is your deep fruits and almost like a baked, like you say, like a baked crumble, but more of a rich fruit. But the fruit has to be coming from the older years, not the younger, because the lighter ones or the younger years would be a more lighter note.
But it doesn't taste of 50% alcohol.
Oh no, it
tastes a lot lighter than 50%.
Well, I'm not even tasting any alcohol burn at all, which is not from having too much already. But it's incredibly smooth.
There's a little bit of spice
as
well.
I hope the other people who come onto your shows allow all your team to drink the whiskey as well. They've got a lot to do.
All engagement, yeah. So with the cask finishes from the 5 decades.
Yeah.
Do you know what the cask finishes are on them? Were they all like bourbon cask, sherry cask, or?
So the 40 and 50 are all bourbon casks.
Yeah.
Predominantly refill bourbon, because under White Mackay it was a lot of refill bourbon.
Yeah.
Then the 30-year-old would be started off in bourbon, but finished for its last, let's say, 15, 16 years in Oloroso sherry.
In Oloroso sherry, okay.
Same.
So I'm just trying to get, like JP touched on as well with the spicy notes. There is a spice there.
Yeah.
And it's more of like the cinnamon star anise kind of note, but that only really comes from a sherry finish. So that's what I'm saying with the bourbon. That's where I'm getting those kind of apple notes that are coming through still, or like a baked crumble, custard tart, that kind of note. But there has to be some sherry in there, some sherry influence.
No, there is a kind of the 20 and 30-year-old side of things has got some sherry influence in the whiskey.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. For something that's, I'm going to have a bit more in a minute.
Well, you've got to leave some for other people as well, surely.
There's plenty in there. For something that what you're saying was £200 on the shelf at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess hopefully some people will still be able to get that price, but
only you, no one else.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Which is.
It's an amazing looking bottle as well.
It's not that. It's everything. I look at whiskies in terms of,
it's the story as well for me.
Everything behind it, and it's what it encompasses. So it's 5 decades of liquid. I always have this, not argument, but I will always put people straight in the kindest way possible. So when people come into the shop over the last few years, and obviously we're customer based and personal shopping experience, and our shopping experience is what we class as second to none in terms of what we do. So I'll never insult anyone, but I will always put people correct. There's no one's ever. Yeah,
no one's above anyone.
No one's ever wrong, but they're not always right.
Yep.
And when people come in and ah about the price on certain whiskies, and sometimes it's even like £60, £70 on a bottle of whiskey, and even sometimes the 50 mark. And then if you really go into it on people, you say, well, hang on a minute, right? So you like all spirits, like right? So you pay £50 on that gin, yeah, that's fine. But if I want that gin, I could call up someone and they make it overnight, and it's here, and you'll happily pay £50 for it. To have that on the shelf at £50 when you've got your 7 or 8 years from aging, the cask of whiskey that had sherry in before is seasoned for like 9 or 10 years prior.
Well, this has actually had 42 years seasoned in sherry before.
So 42 years of season for the cask itself, then the liquid to go in.
Yeah.
So in total, you're looking at 50 odd years of time, care, love, and passion to put something on the shelf at £50.
Yep.
For me, any whiskey under 100, I'd probably even, I always said 100, but actually even 200 is a bargain in terms of what you ultimately get.
Yep.
So it's and like you said, for me then after that, I love stories and something that's real, not just made up or just what can we create to have a price put on something. This generally has 5 decades, and it's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal.
But no, it's been a pleasure being part of the show today.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for coming down.
What are the sort of future plans for the show?
I don't really, to be honest, I just want to get as many people from the industry and I wouldn't say hospitality, but the spirits world. I do know a lot of people in hospitality, and don't get me wrong, my whole background, from 15 was when I first started working for my father as a glass collector in his nightclub, with the promise of...
What nightclub was that?
He had a nightclub in Hatfield called... I don't know what, at the time I think it was called CO2, I think. And it was the only nightclub for Hatfield at the time. And you had a massive university building there, one of the largest in the country actually now. But years down the line, they opened up their own nightclub because they're sort of losing that money. They wanted their own kind of money to that. So we did that for a while, but I've always been in that industry. And then I met my business partner who we started Tomoka with through his cocktail bar. And then we ran that together. And it was the first cocktail bar in St Albans, and we did premium cocktails, premium spirits, and that's where the love of spirits came from, because we wouldn't just use shit in the cocktails, we would use premium products. The guys would come in and juice all day long, fresh juices, not pouches. We did everything right, and that's where the passion came from for spirits. So I know a lot of people in the industry that are crossovers between just the hospitality, but also into where they went into brand representation. Representing some of the biggest brands out there in the world, some of the most famous. So, and through obviously my connections through what we do for Tomoka, I know a lot of people from different aspects, like yourself. For me, you were a no-brainer for the first one, because there's many people I know, but for one of the last owned family distilleries, for me that's huge, because that's it's a dying thing. All the big corporates taking over. And we, like you said, we become friends. We work closer together. The brand's amazing. The price points are great. So it was a natural thing. But in terms of where we take it, I don't know. The one thing we've never wanted this podcast to be, because people know us for a retail shop, they know us for investments. It's not to be a sales pitch. It's not to be something to watch and say, right, we're going to be jamming something down your throat like a marketing pitch on a film. It's just really to just talk people through the industry. Hopefully teach them stuff they've never heard before, and meet great people, hear great stories. So it's been amazing to start with you and learn some stuff. And like you said, it's little bits I don't even know about your brand, which is it was great to know. And like you said, we'll continue to work together, and hopefully any new brands you bring we'll touch upon. I know you mentioned actually you got a gin. Actually, we should probably just finish on that.
We've got
a gin coming out. Well, I know we spoke about gin, saying that there's a big peak and trough. That must be a daunting thing to do.
We've been knocking the gin, haven't we? But now I'm going to ask you to sell our gin. So that's so that's good.
Yeah.
But at Glencadam, we're building a visitor centre to celebrate the 200th year anniversary, and we're kind of redeveloping a bit of the distillery. Obviously, keeping it as traditional to 200 years as possible.
Yeah.
We've still got a dunnage warehouse there from 200 years old. Originally from 1825, but we're building a gin still at Glencadam, so we're going to have a Glencadam style gin.
Okay, so it's actually going to be called Glencadam gin?
It's going to be called Glencadam gin, which will be in obviously the visitor shop, but also will be available to a few customers in the UK and worldwide. So once we have the gin, obviously we'll let you try it and see what you think.
Yeah, we'll have
it. But I think it's a no-brainer for people. If you've got an association with Glencadam, the whiskey is second to none.
Yeah.
And we hope the gin will be of similar ilk to the whiskey. So
you'll have a natural base out there, because I think anyone that likes Glencadam whiskey, most people like a lot of different spirits, and there's an environment and a time for a certain spirit.
Yeah.
Gin and tonic is great with your meal, and then they have that whiskey after. So I think you'll have a fan base there for it 100%.
So, we're looking forward to that as well.
Yeah. But amazing. Thanks for coming down, mate.
No worries.
Then we'll touch base. I'll tell you what I'd love to do. Actually, we'll leave it on this. Is that let's look at doing like a
trip to the distillery.
A part 2, and let's come up and visit.
Visit Tomintoul, visit
Glencadam,
with Robert, and you can do a podcast with Robert, and I'll just be on the. I'll be like JP, and we can watch.
We'll bring you in every now and again.
You can bring me in now and again.
Yeah, that'd be amazing, because it'll give everyone an insight into really how a distillery works. Show people around everything, and but I mean, we like I say, we don't want everyone to stay in a fixed place. As many times as we could get to Scotland,
perfect.
We'd love to do that. So that would be a great kind of transition from part 1 to part 2, and do that.
No, sounds great.
Cool, lovely.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot for coming down.
No worries.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.